You're listening to the Fezcast, the Saracens fans podcast, bringing you the independent and unhinged views of the voices in our heads, as well as those of our special guests. To get in touch with us, find the Fezcast on social media and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube and more. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hello everybody and welcome to another edition of the Fezcast. First of all, Duncan, you're here with us, joining us so we can discuss things and have an argument a bit later on in the show. But we've got a couple of brilliant interviews today, haven't we? You spoke to Charlie Beall on Monday. I spoke to Rotimi Segun last week, so we'll have those in there. But before we do that, we're going to introduce a new member of the team. Well, I say a new member of the team. Got in touch with us on Facebook, said, I'd like to be involved in this, which immediately puts us a bit wariness about that. How do you pronounce your surname, Sam? Is it Mitchell, Michael?
No, I've had all of those, but no, it's Michelle. So it's somewhere along the line, it's French, but I'm not quite sure where. Yeah.
Well, Sam, welcome to the Fezcast. Thank you for putting your hands in the air and sticking your head above the parapet and saying you wanted to be involved in it. But tell us a little bit about yourself and why Saracens.
Been Saracens pretty much all my life. So, yeah, been going for a very long time. Was kind of born and raised North London. Dad's from Colindale originally in that part of the world. So, yeah, it's all there. Lived in Watford. Started going when we was at Vicarage Road many, many moons ago. And, yeah, been a season ticket holder for many years. And, yeah, for my sins. So I've seen the good times and the bad and everything in between.
I mean, that's always a good point, isn't it, Duncan? That, you know, we do see an awful lot of fans who've only ever seen the good times. And their aspect, it's good to know that we've got people out there who do remember the days of Chris Jack trousering the wage and Andy Good turning up and not bothering on a Saturday afternoon at Vicarage Road and whatever. But, I mean, Sam, who's your favourite player of all time at Saracens?
I am a very big Faz fan. Contractual, obligation, as you would say, gents. So, yes. So
You may, man. I think that's fair dues. I mean, did you play the game yourself as well, Sam?
Played, yeah, for a while. Not to any sort of decent standard, just, yeah. But I've got the bad knees and the bad back to prove it. So, yeah, not to a great standard, but yes, played it, enjoyed it. Dare I say, I discovered alcohol around the wrong time, and yeah, any chance I had of making it professional went downhill from there. So,
In my day, having an alcoholic problem was part of the remit of getting in the side, Duncan, wasn't it?
I discovered at school that I had the perfect combination to be a rugby player, and that I was small and slow, so I never made it to the alcoholic stage.
Yeah, he says that after spending too long in a whiskey bar in Glasgow. I mean,
Oh, God. I've discovered whiskey. It's been my downfall.
I mean, as I say, we got a packed show. Charlie Beall had a chat with Duncan, which is really interesting, which we're going to do in the second half of the show. But before we get into it, I sat down last week, spoke to Rotimi Segun about his career, his season, everything that's going on in the club. So, Duncan, shall we play that in now, and then we'll have a reaction to that afterwards?
We certainly shall.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hello, this is Akina Gondwe of Saracens Women, and you're listening to the Fezcast, and we are both proudly sponsored by the Saracens Supporters Association. For a £10 annual subscription to the SSA, you'll get the chance to buy tickets for away matches, receive a regular newsletter, and an exclusive SSA badge. They also arrange pre-match gatherings and player-coach events. As well as sponsoring both me and the Fezcast, they also sponsor Louis Johnson from the men's team and the Saracens Foundation Track Club. Not bad for £10. You can join up at membermojo.co.uk/SSA. Enjoy the rest of this edition of the Fezcast, and I look forward to seeing you at Stonex. Come on, you Sarries.
This is the Fezcast.
I'd like to welcome to the Fezcast someone that we've been wanting to speak to for quite some time. He's been at the club since 2016, made his first appearance in February 2018. Welcome to the Fezcast, Rotimi Segun. Rossi, how are you, mate?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, very good, mate. Very good. Thank you for taking the time out. I know you've just come off training. We were speaking Thursday lunchtime before the game this weekend in the Prem Cup. I mean, how's things going? How's it all at the club at the moment?
Yeah, we've had a good training week so far. Yeah, good competitive sessions this week. Tuesday was pretty spicy, which is nice. We're trying to get back to a point where we're actually probably competing in every session. And yeah, this week's been a good step forward.
So that's good to hear. Yourself personally, Roti, the last few seasons, you've had a few problems with a few injuries. You've had long periods out of the game. This season, though, fingers crossed, you've had a pretty good run. Not too much in the way of injuries, and we've really seen you develop into, well, I'm personally saying you're our player of the year so far. I mean, your performance has been exceptional. Are you doing anything different this year, or is it just the way it goes?
I've had a couple of years of being out and stuff, and like there's been a lot that's been gone into sort of my development in terms of off the pitch stuff with the physios and the S&C over here. Like we've learned a lot with a lot of the things that have happened. Seen some specialists and stuff like that. Got some biomechanics stuff done, and sort of get more into a pattern of knowing what to listen to in your body and stuff like that a bit more. And so we're a bit better with all of that sort of stuff.
And how old are you now? You're sort of like your late 20s, are you? Early 30s?
Yeah.
So, yeah, obviously, as your body matures, you get to learn a bit more about it. I suppose the thing is, are you thinking of international recognition? Because we've been pumping you this season, saying that you could be a bit of a dark horse, particularly given the fact that England have had a bit of a time of it the last couple of weeks. I mean, is that something you think about, or are you just happy at the moment doing your best as Saracens and what happens, happens?
Everyone wants to play for the country, obviously, but at the same time, you got to play as well as you can for your club, because if you're not even playing for your club, then you're never going to get, picked and recognised internationally. So I've got to keep performing well week in, week out, and then, just see what happens.
You've been the benefit, I think, this season, and yourself and other wingers such as Noah Kalori and Max Maynard, you've been scoring lots of tries. We got try bonus points galore this season. Has there been a change in the attack systems this season and the coaching that is bringing fruition at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, Dai's been great. Having him here and just sort of encouraging lads to sort of show what they're capable of has been massive. Not like we couldn't do that before, but I guess he's brought a fresh sort of look on things and a bit of a fresh take, and it's been pretty refreshing, for all of us. And I think, we just, take confidence from what we can do on the, ball in hand and, taking people on and just enjoying doing that sort of stuff.
That's great, because it's great to see that and to see the tries that are being scored. Each week at the start of the season, we're saying, well, there's another world-class one. There's a try of the season contender. It's been great. On the flip side, perhaps we've seen more tries scored against us this season. Certainly, there's been a couple of results that haven't gone our way. Is that a direct response to the fact that we're scoring more tries that perhaps defence isn't, or is there still that wolf pack fire out there and we're going to get stingy again?
Well, we focus on both sides of the ball and always have done. It's not a case of we focus on attack and then not on defence. I think, we're trying some new things. We've tried a few new things over the past couple of years, just tried to change things slightly to sort of try and suit the group, I guess. And it's just, you kind of go through periods of trying to figure stuff out. And I think we're just sort of in one of those periods. But, we've seen when we get it right, it's pretty devastating to play against. It's just making sure that we do it week in, week out.
Yeah, I suppose that's it, isn't it? It's the consistency that's important in all of these systems, is provided you do the same thing every time and it's working out, it will develop and it will bear fruition, as I say. Now, the big question is, you're the first player we've spoken to on the Fezcast since the big news about Mark McCall moving upstairs, giving up his role. First of all, how important is Mark McCall, not only to you as a person, because, I mean, he's been your director of rugby since you've been at the club, obviously, but also to the club? I mean, how are the club feeling with Mark now, saying end of the season, that's it, I'm moving up?
For me personally, he's always challenged me throughout my career to be better. And as a young player, sometimes you can think he cracks it a little bit, but there's always things to improve on. And sometimes, again, selection doesn't go your way and stuff like that. But again, it's finding ways to push yourself to keep putting your hand up. And, Mark's been pivotal in that for a lot of us, a lot of us who will come through. And in terms of him moving on, I guess, everyone sort of gets to the point where they feel like it's time for them to sort of do something different. And, he's been there for, I think, when I spoke to him about it, I think he said 17 years or something like that. So, sometimes, especially the stress of games and, planning stuff week in, week out. And, it's not, it seems like, there's not that many games, but actually you're doing this we maybe have 4 or 5 weeks off in the summer, and then you're pretty much slogging it out for the rest of the year. And I know it's obviously similar to normal jobs as well, but at the same, like, you know, there's pressure to win stuff all the time and stuff like that, and it can get a lot. So, you know, I don't blame him. I don't, you know, hold anything against him for making this decision. And I think, you know, sometimes people have to do what's best for them, and I think, you know, it'd be good for him. And obviously, Brendan coming in would also be a nice change as well.
Yeah. Has Brendan had much of an impact yet, or is he still very much sort of like holding his path, or, you know, holding his ideas before next season when he takes over?
So Brendan's been in, you know, sporadically over for how long anyway. So like we see him at least, you know, once or twice a year. So I think he's been in pretty direct correspondence with Smalley anyway for a long time. So I don't think it'll change that much. And yeah, like in terms of what Brendan will bring, I mean, I've fortunately got to know him quite well over the past couple of years. And, you know, I think I think he'll bring just a different energy, like, you know, a little bit of a refresh, nothing drastic, but, you know, just a fresh set of ideas, you know, to sort of hopefully spur us into being a bit more consistent and, yeah, hopefully just kick on as a club.
Good news there. I'm certainly looking forward to seeing how that develops. Now, Roti, you're clearly now a senior player, and in your position, you know, we've seen the likes of Sean Maitland, Alex Lewington, who would have been those senior guys previously. They've moved on now. I'm assuming that you're kind of moving into that senior wingman position. Does that sit well with you? Is that something that you've looked for and that you've enjoyed, being perhaps that senior player now?
I mean, it's just sort of the life cycle of the sport, I guess. So it's one of those things that, like, it's not necessarily been something that sort of happened, I guess, overnight. But, you know, the more you play, I guess, the more experience you get. And the younger the players who come in are, you know, they kind of look up to you and they've watched you play a lot. So, yeah, at some point you then, you know, when I was even last year, you know, being the sort of senior player for Tobias was a bit eye-opening, because you're just like, I'm still 27, 28, and like, you know, got someone here who's like, oh, you used to watch some of this and that and blah, blah, and asking me for advice, and you're like, whoa, like, you know, things have changed a little bit, but no, it's cool. Like, it's a different perspective on a lot of things, and it makes me think about things a bit more in terms of not just for myself, you know, I have to, you know, help out a lot as well, which is good. It's like, I like, you know, being able to help guys sort of develop defensively, like in attack, whatever else, and yeah, it's just provides a different perspective for me rather than just focusing on what I can do to get better. You know, it's sort of more of a team thing, and it's been nice.
I mean, you mentioned Tobias there, but obviously there's a fair few other youngsters coming through. I mean, obviously Noah Calori's burst onto the scene in a big way, but you got Jack Bracken, Angus Hall, for instance, all young guys. I mean, how infused are you by seeing these guys coming through? Secondly, how does that make you perform better, knowing that these young guys are snapping on your heels and want your place? And thirdly, what sort of advice do you give to these youngsters?
Well, that's it. Yeah, like, you know, you kind of you see all these freak athletes who are like 21, 22. You're just like, right, I gotta be at the top of my game every week, because, you know, they keep, you know, pushing and getting better, and, like, you know, training's again competitive, and, like, you know, we're pushing each other to be better. So it's you know, it's good. Like, again, competition is what, you know, breeds success, I think. And, you know, when we've been at our best as a club, I think we've had a lot of competition throughout the whole squad. Yeah, it's just exciting to see, obviously, where these guys can take it. You know, they again, a lot of them have had unbelievable starts to their career so far, and, like, you know, to be playing so many games so young is you know, pretty remarkable. So yeah, no, really excited to see, obviously, how they kick on and stuff. And in terms of, like, advice and whatever, well, like, it sort of depends, really. Like, we all sort of go through training and stuff anyway, like in our backs meetings and stuff. And then if there's, like, some specific things, like, you know, that they're questioning on the pitch, like, we'll talk about it, or even, like, you know, after training or whatever. Like, it just depends. But again, like, I try to be as approachable as I can be, so then they don't feel like intimidated or whatever to come and actually ask those questions, which I think, you know, we've definitely, well, I feel like I've been good in that sense.
Change from my day, Rossi. In my day, we used to say, I'll teach you everything out of the black book, but we'll keep the red book until when I'm ready to retire, sort of thing, you know. But there you go. That's the way it's changed. Now, I'm going to move on, talk about support. I mean, you get great support from all the fans, but you, amongst a lot of the players, your father in particular is very seen a lot around the ground, taking some fantastic photographs that he does. Your whole family are very supportive of you. I mean, how important is it that your family have bought in, and also that Saracens as a club are always welcome into families as well and make them part of the team almost?
Yeah, it's been massive. Like, they've, throughout my whole career, like even when I was a kid, they'd be driving me everywhere and stuff, like coming to all the games. Like I'm pretty sure I looked at some of the first photos my dad took, and I think we were probably, like, I was probably maybe 8 years old or something, like 9 years old. So he's been doing it for, pretty much 20 years of my life. And, that support, that belief that they sort of instilled into me, and in particular, has been massive because, again, not everything's gone my way in my career. There's been, adversity, and there's been things to sort of get over to sort of strive towards. And like, if I didn't have that support from my family, my mum and my dad, my brothers, it would have been, significantly harder. So I think, the support has been massive. And the fact that they still come to every single game, pretty much every weekend, even some of the away games as well, they'll be there with, so it's massive. And then obviously in terms of the club as well, I was, 19-year-old sort of looking for a club whilst I was at Loughborough. And, again, Harry's welcomed me with open arms, just sort of being like, hey, yeah, go and do what you need to do at Loughborough, go and get your degree. But, they were again backing me in that sense. And again, it makes you want to be part of it. It makes you want to, again, do your best for the club. And yeah, it just instills, I guess, good habits into sort of the players. And again, the support that they give you, you want to pay back and some,
What sort of player are you when things perhaps haven't gone your way, whether it be injuries or whether results aren't particularly going your way, or you've not had a game that you perhaps were happy with? Are you the sort of like stew in the corner and everybody leaves you alone, or does everybody just get around you and sort of like drag you out of any sort of like issues or whatever?
No, I'm more of a just like leave me be and I'll get over it. Like I try not to lean too much on people when I don't need to. And I think sometimes it's a case of like, you just got to be honest with yourself in a lot of situations. And if you can do better, then all right, get on with it, doing better. And that's what settles me. Obviously, it's not for everyone. Some people need a bit of support here and there. But at this point in my career, especially, you can't, well, you can, but I mean, I'm sort of one who's sort of got to understand how to get myself back to where I need to be.
So everybody has different ways of doing things. I mean, I was certainly if I'd had a bad game, then I'd redecorate changing rooms and God knows what else. It's never really worked. So you had that moment of frustration, don't you? But I mean, what does Roti do on downtime? You play this weekend. Sunday's free before you go back into training. What do you do to chill, to recenter, to do whatever? I mean, you go off and have a round of golf, or you read a book or whatever? I mean, what do you do?
Not a golfer. At some point might become a golfer, but not a golfer. No, so this weekend, probably just watch a lot of the football on Sunday, to be honest. That's usually my go-to. Try and watch. I'm a massive Arsenal fan, so I'll watch them over the weekend.
We'll end the interview here then, because I mean, I'm a West Ham fan. The only West Ham fan I ever got to interview was Jackson, obviously, and you're all over Tottenham or Arsenal. I suppose being an Arsenal fan, though, I mean, you're taking the mickey out of Tottenham boys at the moment, aren't you?
There's no real need. It's been, it's been the same result for the past 3-4 years. So it's at some point you got to cut them a little bit of slack. So I just left them alone.
As I say, I'm a West Ham fan. I would not leave anybody alone, but then again, I don't get that opportunity very often, do I? So
yeah. No, if it were like a few years ago, then yeah, you kind of, when we weren't winning as much, you'd be more keen to rub it in everyone's face. But now it's more like, okay, we've got to make sure that we actually win the thing rather than just rubbing in, a few wins here and there. So.
Do you have a chance to go to Arsenal or see any of the players? I mean, do you move in the sort of same circles? And
it's different because like they train pretty much every day. Like they're in a lot, so God knows what they get up to after their training. No, I get down every now and then, which is cool. Again, who doesn't love going? Well, obviously you probably don't love going to the Emirates because you probably haven't won there for a long time. But I love it, and it's nice to sort of watch different sports every now and then, especially in person. The atmosphere there it can be pretty nuts, so it's cool.
Yeah, excellent stuff. Now, the other side of your life, of course, is that you mentioned you were at Loughborough. You got a degree, was it in chemistry? I mean, is that something that you use now, or is it something that's very much on the back burner, waiting for the end of your career, or always giving you an option at the end of your career?
I think it's more option at the moment. Like I've fortunately able to still be playing and stuff. Yeah, focusing on that. But again, you got to have one eye on, stuff after rugby. And like the degree was sort of the first step of that, which I'm very happy that I did, to be honest, because if I had to start sort of doing that now, it would be a bit tougher. So, yeah, grateful to have got that.
And the club is supportive of you if you were, and younger players coming through now. I mean, if you're, say, we mentioned Noah Clory, 19, if he wanted to go off, although he's got a career in rugby, if he wanted to go off and be educated, we saw Maro Itoje did it, didn't he? He got his degree whilst he was playing.
Yep.
So that's something the club are very keen on players doing.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, that's a lot of the reason why I came to Saracens, because like they were one of the only clubs at the time that would support you, actively want you to sort of go and be educated, but also support you rugby wise as well. And like, to be able to have done both is massive for me. And like we see it a lot as well, like with the egghead guys coming in, that, a lot of them are, between here and Loughborough, which is good because again, I think you get a bit more of a balanced lifestyle. You sort of see stuff not just from a rugby perspective, but from a sort of, even though uni itself isn't real life, but it's different to, just being in this environment the whole time. So I think you come into this a bit more balanced off the back of that. Yeah, no, they've always been supportive with that sort of stuff, whether it's uni or just courses outside of it or whatever.
I interviewed Chris Chesney a season or so ago, and he was talking about the fact that there's only a finite number of jobs in rugby for ex-rugby players to go. So you have to find somewhere. But if someone came to you, Roti, and said, look, we think you've got the ability to be a coach or a mentor and stay in the game, is that something that you would look at? Or is it a case of you're going to think, I've got my chemistry degree, that's where I want to spend the next 30 years of my life whenever that finishes? Or is it too early to make that decision?
Yeah, a little bit too early. I don't know. Like, again, I've enjoyed obviously being a bit more of a mentor to some of the younger guys here. If that is something that really interests me sort of going forwards and stuff, and, then I could look into getting coaching badges and stuff like that. But again, these are things to sort of figure out over a few more years further down the line,
Well, indeed. Well, look, we hope you're around for a fair few more years now, scoring those tries, bustling down that wing, making yourself look huge, which is, I think that's something that we've been really impressed this year, that your defence has been absolutely tip-top. Your attack's been great, but your defence, every time that ball goes up in the air and you think you're up against somebody who's 6'5" or something, and you think, yeah, no, right, he's got him. You've got him. So, yeah, that's great to see. Right, I say, best of luck for the rest of the season, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the season, starting with a game up at Franklin's Gardens on the weekend. I hope you go up there and give the Saints a bit of a pasting, because we're about due to give them one, I think, to be fair.
Oh, sure.
Absolutely. And say thank you very much for your time and joining us on the Fezcast, and hopefully we'll get time to chat to you again in the future at some point, and certainly at the ground when we see you.
For sure. Thanks for having me.
No worries. And just before you go, have you got a message for the fans that you'd like to say just before you go?
Yeah, just stick with us. We're working on it, and hopefully we'll be able to bring trophies back to the club. So yeah, stick with us. Thanks.
Cheers, Roti.
Thank you.
This is the Fezcast.
Welcome back, everybody. A really interesting chat with somebody who I think is up there to be one of our players of the season.
Definitely player of the season. Well, the first thing I'd like to say about it is what a fantastic voice. It's like, isn't he? Yeah, it's like a deep bass voice. It's absolutely brilliant. The problem he's always had in previous seasons, we've known he's going to be a great player for years and years and years, but he always got injured and we lost him. And this season, we're getting a good long run with him, and it's really paying dividends because, again, we'll talk about the Saints game, but his try again. Had no right to score that try as he bundled past two players, but he's just deadly this season.
It's nice that he's had a nice, clean bill of health and a really good run. We've seen it for the last few seasons now where we get glimpses and we think, blimey, bit of luck on the injury front. And echoing what Duncan says, as I say, it's fantastic that he's had a nice, clean bit of health. We're seeing what he can do now. He is deadly, and even in defence, his defence is superb, and I don't think it gets talked about enough sometimes, that even in defence, it is fantastic. And yeah, to see him have a long overdue clean bill of health and a bit of good luck on that side of things, we're all reaping the rewards on that side of it.
And he confirmed what you said in your question, which is they've done something different with his conditioning and his training, and something that they've done is right. So he's not getting those hamstrings or those whatevers now.
What we're getting not only is a consistency of appearance, but a consistency of performance. And the consistency of performance is at an exceptionally good level. And that comes from the player having personal pride, which came through in the conversation. He is now a senior player, whether he likes it or not, because I think he was a little bit put back at that question, but he is 30 years old now. Alex Lewington, Sean Maitland, Alex Goods, senior back three players have moved away and retired from the game, and he has stepped up into that role and taken on that phrase elder statesman role within the back line.
Is he really 30?
Yeah.
He's had to wait a long, long time to have a career, hasn't he?
Yeah.
And in a way, he's arrived with a career at his peak years.
He's obviously matured, not only physically, but also mentally. And perhaps a lot of that mental maturity has come, Sam, from the fact that he has had a lot of bad luck with injuries and, having to establish his place in the team. But that's created a really rounded player now.
Very much so. And like you say, he's had to wait a long time. And every time he's had an opportunity, he's kind of taken it, or he's had a very good game. And then the next game he's disappeared and it's like, oh, he must be injured again. And it's just, it's been unfortunate. But he's really grabbed it. As you say, we've got a lot of young, exciting talent coming through on those wings and in that back three that I didn't realise that he's 30 years of age, but he's the older statesman now. And he's kind of grabbed it by the scruff of the horns. And it's really good to see.
His dad's a feature around the club, prominent on Facebook. He's always taking part in the SSA things. He's always at the ground. It's a good thing that Roti's had that family, as he said in the chat, to help him through what must have been some really dispiriting years.
The importance of how support is manifested as well, because people recover from injuries in different ways. I mean, my wife's had a hip replacement recently. She's like a caged tiger almost because she can't go to work. And then she's got to the point in her recovery where she can't do the housework, but she can watch me do the housework badly. and it all comes out and everything. When I got injured as a player, I was like a bear with a sore head. I mean, I had a season out with an ACL injury and still managed to get sent off in a game. Whilst on crutches. And don't ask me that. I think that's too long a story to go into. But I mean, the fact that his family can recognise that he's the sort of player who needs a bit of time on his own, but to be there when he sticks his hand in the air and says, I need some help. And that's what support they give him, Duncan.
And the thing about your wife is she's stuck in the house with you.
Yeah, well, true. I mean, she'll get a medal at the end of this. I'll say thank you very much to Roti for doing that. And it was a fabulous interview. And we'll have to get his dad on sometime. And I'll get in touch with his dad and get his dad's point of view from that. That'd be really quite interesting, wouldn't it? But shall we move on to the game of the weekend, which we all obviously went along or watched. We've watched highlights, haven't we, on YouTube, basically. When we talk to Charlie Beall a bit later on and you talk about how get people to go along to games, effectively speaking, it was a bit of a dead rubber with lots of other things going on. Were people going to travel to Northampton? Well, the normal candidates obviously did. Your Loxies and your Nigers and whoever would always go, and fair do some. And thankfully for Loxie, you wrote a pretty good report of it so that we can discuss it. But we had a couple of bad results and we were never all going to go en masse, were we, Sam?
No, unfortunately not. And due to a family commitment, couldn't go at the weekend. I'm only based in Aylesbury, so it's not a million miles away from me. And usually that is one of the rare away fixtures that I do venture out to, Prem Cup or otherwise. But unfortunately, just for me, it seems that the last few games, and I've been to the Prem Cup games at the Stonex, we seem to be finding ways to lose them in the dead of the game when we should have it sewn up. And for me, I don't know, it just seems a little bit worrying, gents. I don't know what you feel about it.
Well, we could use the old joke about the lads being told to take their dogs down to Battersea Dog Zone because they can't be trusted with leads at the moment. But I mean, it was clearly a good performance from the lads. With a team that had Alistair Zosky starting at 10, a position he probably hasn't played for two and a half, 3 seasons maybe. And Alex has been shoved around the backs. He's played centre, he's played fullback, he's played 10 now. And there's half expression is there was another game in the Prem Cup if you play in scrum half next week. You've got a couple of lads coming back from injury. Great to see Tobias back as well, Duncan, obviously. So, on the face of it, going away to Northampton, who's a team that both you and I have rated when we've seen them, that they are very good and they've got some great kids coming through behind the established stars, well coached by Phil Dowson. To only go down by 2 points, you would say if you just looked at that as a result on the newspaper on a Sunday morning, that's not a bad result, is it?
Yeah, it's just the way in which we're losing these games because, again, just based purely on the highlights, it just looks like some terrible defending at the end. And I just have a little bit of a suspicion that we don't really take the Prem Cup seriously, either as a pure development competition to give our young fellas game time or trying to win it because we're putting players in the team. I mean, Alex Lazowski, as we said before, been a great servant of the club, but clearly since he decided to move on, mentally has had, shall we say, application issues. And he's been playing in all the games. We've got Brandon Jackson moving on, and many have been pointing the finger at him defensively as being one of the main reasons for these losses. And it just had a little bit of a feel that it's yet another pre-season friendly, which in a way I think it is. It's sort of getting ready for the season to start again.
I think if we'd got a win against Quins, we might have seen it slightly differently. But the fact of the matter is we're out of the competition. So, yeah, let's have some other players in key positions warmed up, but not so warmed up that they get injured. And, you got the sacrificial lamb, although he's a massive sacrificial lamb, Sam. Brandon Jackson on the wing, who, bless him, I don't think it's through lack of effort, but there's something going wrong there because every week at the moment we're talking about a defensive error that has costed us. At the end of the day, one try at the end of the game doesn't define the whole game. There were 30 other points scored.
Yes.
But Brandon's one mistake coming when it gets highlighted, doesn't it?
And it was highlighted, and unfortunately you see it and you think, unfortunately, it's not his strong suit, is it? And it's probably why he's on his way to Newcastle at the end of the season. You see it and you think, yeah, it's that wing again. It's that defence that's let him down and let us down. But like you say, before that, it shouldn't have got to that position anyway. But if you go back maybe a month, 6 weeks, we was in a real opportunity to progress in this competition with a really good young bunch of talented players, as well as the mix of the experience that we sprinkle in, week out. And it's just a little bit disappointing that we haven't been able to take advantage of that and try and progress.
Oh, that's a fascinating point you made there, actually. And it takes me back to the season when we came back up, Duncan, after relegation, and we were in the Challenge Cup. And let's be honest about it, Saracens with the likes of Maro Itoje and Owen Farrell and Jamie George and Alex Gooden here should have walked that Challenge Cup competition, the second level of European competition. We progressed to a level in the competition, but ultimately failed. And you just sat there thinking, is there something about Saracens where if it's not the Premier competition, we're not actually too fussed if we don't do anything in it? Which I think is a weird thing because my viewpoint is you get every opportunity to win silverware, you take it. And 10, 15 years ago, we did, when Maro led the A-team.
The A-League, yeah, absolutely right, and we won it. There's clear evidence there that we don't take the Prem Cup seriously, and I'd refer back to the World Cup year when the Prem Cup started the season and everybody was saying, oh, where's our pre-season friendlies? There was an official release that said, oh, it's all right, we've got the Prem Cup. So that is definitely the approach that we've got to the Prem Cup. It's just preparation, which is all right in one sense, except that, talking about value for money with season tickets and all of that, it's not really good enough for that.
If you're going to use it as a preparation, then we should be using it as preparation and bringing through youngsters. Now, I know Louis Johnson was out injured. He got a bit of a hamstring pull, so he probably would have played 10 and Alex Lazowski would have been playing centre. So, credit to Alex. You say he's had application issues. He's clearly turning around and saying, well, if you give me a shirt, I'm going to play in that shirt, which is, you can only admire the bloke for doing that. Ben Earl's away on international duty. Well, Tom Willis is off to France, so we're going to flog him to the ground. But your favourite at the moment, Nathan Miklo, why isn't he playing every week at 8 in those positions? I don't know whether that's something that might be reset under Brendan Venter next year when he takes over, Duncan.
Because it's such a long break, we probably do need warm-up games for Theo McFarlane, for JMG, for Nick Tompkins, etc. They do need a run-out. But I sort of stopped going to quite a few pre-season games some years ago when I saw the most dreadful performance against Northampton with everybody dropping off tackles and what have you. And then we went on that season to do the double.
Yeah.
So, you know, if it's not a proper game, it's not a proper game. And I'm not sure we're treating it as a proper game.
You see someone take Bath, for example, they seem to take it very seriously. And I appreciate they've got a very deep squad, but, you know, they've got a very young, talented squad with a lot of really good-looking youth players coming through, as have we. But they seem to really thrive on it and take it very seriously as kind of like a B or a C squad, whatever you want to call it. And as Duncan says, we just seem to throw out what we will. It will be interesting to see if next year it does change, because for me, it's a prime opportunity that you've got some very good young players there and some senior players that can't crack the Premiership 23, if you like. You know, there's a real opportunity there for them to take advantage. And for whatever reason, we just don't seem to want to entertain it.
I think we've done pretty well there, Duncan, haven't we? To have a discussion about a game none of us actually saw and discuss the items of it. But yeah, you know, Prem Cup's done for another season. Let's wait and see what next season brings us. Duncan, shall we have a break there and then come back with the interview you've done with Charlie Beall, which is really fascinating and covers an awful lot of ground that I think we'll have some talking points to talk about afterwards.
Sure.
Hi, this is Petrus Tbilisi, and you are listening to the Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, I'm here at Stonex, very pleased to be talking to Charlie Beall. Charlie Beall, thanks very much for giving us your time.
It's a great pleasure, Duncan. Thank you and welcome.
You've been in place for about 6 months, I think. I think it's also fair to say that's probably been one of the more difficult 6 months of Saracens' life, in that the team has been inconsistent. Mm-hmm. Probably for the first time in a long time, we might have lost more than we've won, despite some great wins over teams like Toulouse. And we've also lost an iconic director of rugby. That inconsistency in the team must make any marketing approach difficult, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, although it gives you the hope that the team who beat Toulouse could turn up on any day, because there is so much quality running through the squad and obviously the academy that feeds the squad. I think we're seeing a change in generations. Clearly, we have the old guard who are incredibly successful, decorated and well-respected, but we have got a crop of new up-and-coming talent who we think are going to be incredibly important for the club going forward. And from my relatively uneducated eyes, it feels like there's a change happening and we're sort of between the two eras.
Yeah, I spoke to Mike Heinard a few weeks ago and he's incredibly excited about the crop of youngsters that's coming through. I mean, unfortunately, I think we've had a few injuries that's perhaps held that back a little in seeing we would have otherwise seen more new faces in the team.
Yeah, I mean, if I look at before his unfortunate shoulder injury, Charlie Bracken's performances, he was relatively new to the first team at the beginning of the season, and then up until recently he would be forgiven for thinking he was a seasoned regular. I mean, his development and maturity has been incredible in those few months.
And we're seeing Tobias Elliott and Angus Young coming back, aren't we? So hopefully we'll see, when the season gets going proper again, we'll see a good run for players like that.
Yes, exactly. And then there's others. There's obviously Noah, who's had an incredible impact. Olamide's had an incredible impact. Nathan Mitchell's coming through. There's a lot of good talent coming through. So, yeah, has it been challenging? Yes. But there's enough green shoots there to be very, very buoyant about the future, I think.
There's a lot for Brendan Ventnor to work with, isn't there?
There is. And he was with us a few weeks back and loved seeing the talent coming through in our Prem Cup team, which is obviously where you get the players who are more up and coming showing off their wares. And he's very excited to work with some of the younger talent.
Oh, that's good to know. What has gone well in the short period that you've been here?
So when I arrived, we were very close to being able to launch what we call the rebrand. And I think that was an unqualified success. I think because, broadly speaking, it sort of made Saracens cool again in rugby circles without damaging any of the sort of pride or touch points for regular and core fans. The rebrand was good because it made people who are already fans of the club more proud, of our 150th year, which is coming up, the heritage of the club, not laying aside any of that heritage, trying to chase new eyeballs, but also recognizing that new eyeballs are important. That was a great success. I think the blooding of young talent on the field has been successful. Clearly you speak to the director of rugby transition that will take place next season. As far as finding a replacement for someone as special as Mark, identifying Brendan probably was the best solution for the club, given the fact that he's as close to continuity as you can get when you make such an important transitional change.
It seems like an incredible gift from him, given he's got a doctor's practice in a country on the other side of the planet. To give that up, to come back to Saracens was something really big, I think.
Well, I just think it shows how much he loves the club. Yeah, you speak to Brendan and he'll tell you he's got a very nice life. You don't make a decision like he's made lightly. So we're incredibly lucky to have him. Having spent some time with him, I just know what a good man he is. And it's the best thing for that we could have had happen whilst losing someone as special and decorated and legendary as Mark.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned the new marketing approach, which I agree with you. Most of the people I know thought it was great, especially the cheekiness of it. It was fantastic. Is it a challenge to keep it fresh and original?
Yes, it is, because everyone thinks you do a rebrand and you're changing logos and signage and then what do you do? It's actually, Mike Leslie, our Chief Growth Officer, speaks about it as behavior change. It's about creating a mindset so that whenever you approach a new social media post or a new marketing campaign, you're challenging yourself to remind both yourself and others in the team to go back to the principles of why you did that rebrand. We are trying to create fans outside of the core rugby group whilst retaining that core, about creating a welcoming environment, about presenting rugby in an accessible way to people who've not necessarily grown up with it. We all know the stats around how many people are playing in schools these days, and I just think we can be a part of reversing that trend.
Yeah. That's one challenge that you mentioned there. Are there other things that remain a challenge that you might have hoped to have tackled by now?
There's obviously challenges that you rank in terms of your ability to get them done, and then you usually apply a time frame over some of them. So some quick wins, obviously the rebrand was one. In terms of squad development or a long-term marketing efficiency program, that was never going to be done in a 6-month period. If you look at, and I'm sure you'll ask me about pricing and season tickets and things like that, you make those on an annual basis. So, if we were to make an adjustment to some of our ticketing prices, that would need to come at the start of a new season. There's just a timescale for every decision. We would also like to get Stonex more well utilised outside of our rugby calendar, and that requires work in terms of our relationship with the London Borough of Barnet, which is, I'd say, very healthy at the moment. But there's some quick wins and some things that will take a little while to bear fruit.
The local residents association, I would imagine, are also a little bit of an obstacle there.
Well, I've not had any issues with local residents. I think I've done a lot of reading up on the history, and I think when we first came to Copthall, there was concern from local residents that there would be a lot more disruption. I think as the years have played out, I think people have become much more comfortable with Saracens being here. They know we're good citizens.
I think generally people are proud. That's right. And being a local resident, I know I'm a lot more glad that I'm looking at this view out of the window on a magnificent site rather than a co-op.
Exactly. One of the most objectively beautiful grounds. Look back to autumn when all the leaves were changing and you look out and it's a glorious setting.
You're a very open CEO, and I know you've raised the issue of whether access is, if there is a glass ceiling at the moment that needs shattering on attendance, is access. From my experience, if you go to, say, Sandy Park in Exeter, you've got to get a bus from the middle of town. Do you have concerns that the access is an obstacle to people coming?
I think there's two things. There's the actual access and then there's the perception.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've got a lot of work to do on the perception. You know, as you say, other venues, even if it's Tottenham Hotspur Stadium or Sandy Park, as you reference, or Craven Cottage, they all have a walk involved, not always close to a tube station. I think the issue we have in London is there's so much choice. Anything that creates friction means that people have an ability to switch to something else. Clearly, we would love to have a tube station really close by. We would like the ingress and egress points around the stadium to be slightly better from a traffic perspective. But I think there are things within our control, more direct control, around educating people about how good our shuttle bus service is. I mean, it really is good. You can get access to the stadium from 3 tube stations, and we're in a city of 9 million people. So with a capacity of circa 10,000, I think changing the perception for just a few % of people will hopefully do the work we need. But yeah, will we keep fighting to try and improve access? Yes.
I agree with 2 of your points there. I think, although normally I'll walk here because I'm lucky that I can, I have come on the shuttle bus, and it is a heck of a lot easier to get here and get home than it is from Tottenham or the Emirates Stadium or any large Premier League football ground. You're absolutely right. And the other point where I totally agree with you is competition. People assume because London is big that it must be a piece of cake. I've mentioned on the podcast before that although it's a bit old now, I saw research that said that your available audience of people who've got the time, the inclination and the money to come regularly to live sport is about 4% of the population you lose within an hour. And you can run all sorts of numbers and then knock off 120,000 going a week to Tottenham Arsenal, etc., and see that it's doable. It's not easy compared to being in a town like Northampton. Well, let's face it, it's bugger all else to do.
Well, you said it, not me. Yeah, we are in an attention economy, and where the sort of unit of economics is people's time, we also have more entertainment at our fingertips than ever before, both literally through our phones, but also people's home entertainment systems are incredible. You know, you can stay in and watch cinema quality, whether it's live sport or entertainment or anything. So, you know, the challenge for live event spaces is to create zero friction and create enough value to get people to go and make the journey and to pay the ticket price.
The live experience is unique. And I've got to say, I think that the live experience here with everything that is associated with the match day experience, I think is brilliant. I think the job that, you know, you and the club do, and I know this from people I bought, is absolutely superb. For me, the main way in which it could be improved is through the loudness of the crowd. And in particular, in that respect, almost every week, the North stand there does a fantastic job. And I wondered whether from a purely, given that it's a temporary structure and from a purely atmosphere point of view, whether it's worth increasing the size of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously the capacity that we have currently, we're not selling out on a week in, week out basis. And that's challenge number one. I think the point that you make is also an acoustic one. Not having an enclosed bowl means that you do get an escape of noise. So I don't think it's necessarily an indictment on the passion of our fans, but more a case of where does that noise go? Where does it travel to in a kind of open-ended stadium as we have it? But would we love to increase capacity? Yes, of course we would. But it needs to be a function of demand.
Oh, it definitely does. It's an interesting one, that. I mean, the Stade Francais has a fantastic stadium with 10,000 people there. It's like a boombox. So there definitely can be an effect. But I have a suspicion that we're a quiet bunch. But I know you don't want to. You want to say that's fine. You've talked both just now and openly about getting to 15,000, which I think is probably important from a financial sustainability point of view as well. An element of that could be pricing. Again, you're almost unique of the quite a few CEOs have been here in decades that I've been following the club to talk about that openly. Plus, I can give you an example. There's a young lad of about 9 I came across the other week who was in his Spurs kit when I met him. He goes to school in West Hampstead, just down the Thameslink. And I said to him, is there any other sports you like? And he said, well, there's a rugby club that train in my local park, and I really like watching them. So I said to him, do you fancy going to a proper professional game then? He said, oh, yeah. So admittedly, I'm in one of the posh seats just out here, but I had a look, and to take him, even with the 10% discount, would be the best part of 60 quid. So God help me if he enjoys it and wants to keep coming about, let alone goes back to his school and tells his mates and they want to come as well.
Yeah.
So pricing is an issue, I think, in certain areas. It seems to me, as I said, that the cheap seats, the North Stand, do well. Where I sit in the prawn sandwich brigade do pretty well. It's the mid-range places that, just from looking at the ground, seem to be where there's the most opportunity.
Yeah, no, you're right. We do very well in retaining those fans who sit at sort of more premium price end seats, and standing is also, a popular category. So you've got the high and low, so to speak, options doing very well, and we do need to do some work in the middle. It's also, to go back to that point around competition, an interesting one, because our sport, I think, fundamentally underpunches on its media rights. So if you look at Premier League football, they're able to keep prices. I mean, I know fans will say that prices are going up, and they'll have gripes about that. But relatively speaking, for the fact that it's a global product and in such high demand, getting a ticket to a Premier League match is quite accessible. And that's because they make so much money from the media. And it's so important to the media deals that they have vibrant crowds and full stadiums. That's one of the things the broadcasters like about the product. So they sort of have a model that incentivizes getting fans through the door. We don't have the fortunate ability to make most of our money from media. And so as rugby clubs, you have to rely on your gate and everything associated with your gate. So that's, what people spend on food and beverage, what people spend on retail. That's the lever you have to pull. Saracens also have fixed capacity of around 10,000. If you look at what levers can be pulled, pricing becomes one of those. Now, I'm not saying that we've got pricing perfect in the past, but we have to balance something that is going to attract fans, that is going to allow a reasonable entry point to different types of fans, whilst living in the financial reality of being a loss-making rugby club. And it's a very difficult balancing act to strike. We're going to have another look at it, and we're going to weigh up all the different factors that go into those decisions. But yeah, it's an important and relevant conversation. And as I said, it's one that you can only sort of have once a year.
You can really hack people off by bringing in discounting mid-season for people who already paid full price. I mean, you do have my sympathy, because I've been that guy on the spreadsheet pricing up a stadium and know how expensive it is to drop prices and how difficult it is to get back the lost, in inverted commas, income from extra attendance. It's not easy. But perhaps I can share with you another anecdote, which was pre-Lucy Ray's days when we were winning the Prem every season and the European Cup every season. And there was a massive great price hike that wasn't particularly well implemented. A lot of people were rezoned, people within zones, the prices went up a lot. And it seemed to me after that elastic band was broken, whereby people felt they had to get a season ticket to make sure they got in. Suddenly it was possible to buy match day tickets, even to the big games, quite easily. As you say, it's a complicated question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially when you're loss-making.
And you're not starting from a blank piece of paper. People have memories, and fans, particularly those who've supported us for many years, will not just make their decision based on the price or the package that you put out next year, but they'll cross-reference it to what they remember previously. So it is complex.
There used to be a guy here back in the Watford days, and I worked with him briefly, called Peter Deakin. This was pre-internet, so marketing was very different. But his whole focus was on cashback schemes. Basically, mum and dad pay full price, kids come for £1. Half the money would go back to their school or their rugby club or
whatever. And you'll find a lot of season ticket holders here today still are season ticket holders because of that initiative. Does that kind of direct marketing still have a place in your more digital approach?
Absolutely. It's not just about putting content and messaging out there through new digital channels. The fundamentals of marketing and offers and incentives and, all of that still applies. And what I've also realized is, we're not going to come in here and reinvent the wheel. There's probably been some good ideas in the past that need dusting off and reapplying. So any of these kinds of things that, supporters have found valuable in the past, please continue to surface them and say, actually, we used to quite like that thing that happened 10 years ago. Would you mind bringing it back? Because it's not just about new ideas. It's some good thinking has happened already.
I thought that was a good idea because obviously the schools were doing the marketing because they were going to get money from it. So it worked, I think. Well, thanks for talking. One last question, if I may. At the moment, the women's team is going through a golden period in terms of what they're delivering on the pitch. The style of rugby that they're playing is just fantastic. And it looks like, touch wood, they're heading for another great climax of a final at the Stoop against Gloucester if everything goes according to form and they get what they deserve. Is the women still a large part of the plans here? And what are your hopes commercially for the women?
So you're right, they're performing incredibly well on the field, but I read some stats that we are the most decorated women's program in club rugby. So to continue those standards year after year is incredible, and I can't claim any credit for that. So yes, we are seeing stiffer competition though,
which is good. It makes the league more interesting.
Yeah. So obviously we'd like to keep winning and winning. Who wouldn't? But on the commercial side, it's an interesting time for women's rugby because you've had such a successful Women's World Cup and, successful from both in real terms, but also in perception terms. Filling Twickenham, the Alliance, for that final was symbolic. What needs to be kept in careful consideration is what does this mean for week in, week out club rugby on the commercial side? Because people aren't voting like they did for that final in the same way, week in, week out, by attending the games. As I just said, the most decorated and incredibly successful women's program. So we need to keep our feet on the ground. Where I think there is commercial potential is around content and sponsorship. I'd love to see more brands understanding the opportunity of working with our women's team. They lean in so heavily on the content side and tell such a fresh story that I think brands can get that value from a sponsorship or a partnership in spades by working with our women.
And they're fantastic ambassadors. I mean, you see the work that they put in after the games, down with an array of, young women and families and what have you. They work their socks off in terms of giving back. So I think
they really do.
That's likely to work. And it's a similar challenge to the men, isn't it? And that, the Six Nations is so successful. And I saw in the paper today, I think they sold 60,000 for the women's game at Twickenham Alliance.
Yeah.
Again, it's about getting that to translate into the club game, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a trend in sports where audiences are flocking to the big events. They're becoming these sort of casual nomads that when something is deemed important, they'll make a beeline for it. But the mid-tier stuff is where they're not going as regularly. And so I think that whole notion of loyal fandom is something that is changing generationally. Yeah, whether we need to live with that and just accept a new reality, or whether we can change fan behaviors and understand what loyalty means to a new generation. I think those are the kinds of questions we need to grapple with.
Because it can take generations to produce that. I went with my dad, so
yeah, exactly.
It means more to me than just a game of rugby.
Yeah.
Well, Charlie, that's fantastic. Thank
once you,
again.
Duncan. Well, thank you for the work you do, and it's been a privilege to come on. A long time listener, first time on the show.
Great. Hopefully we'll see you again.
Thanks. Cheers.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back, everybody. And yeah, well done, Duncan, on a great interview there with Charlie Beall. You went down to Stonex to do that one, obviously, because it's just around the corner for you.
Got on my bicycle.
Well, fair dues. Well, thank you to Charlie for stepping up and talking to us. I know it's not necessarily something that CEOs, ever particularly want to do. But in a entertainment business, which sport is increasingly becoming, it's important that you do hear from the back room, as it were, and the head of the back room, because how they drive the club forward is often a mirror of how the club drives forward on the pitch.
I didn't know how he was going to be. I think he really enjoyed the chat, and I really did, because I found him to be very personable right from the minute he came to the reception and said hello all the way through. He was extremely good company and very entertaining. And as I said in the interview, based mainly on the evening that he did for the SSA, he's very open in his thinking. If he thinks there's potentially a problem with the access or the pricing or the match day experience, he won't be that political with a small p and sort of hide it and talk about anything else. He will talk about what's on his mind. And that's what gave us the opportunity to talk about pricing and try and tease out of him whether there's any big developments coming there. I don't think they have worked it all out yet, but as we discussed in the interview, they do see that there are some things, I believe, that need changing.
One thing you did put out in the interview, Duncan, that I was very interested to hear his viewpoint. When he talks about Peter Deacon, Peter Deacon, a club legend, and sadly missed in the game of rugby union and league. He was a great man.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of the cash back on tickets and everything like that is how I got into the game. And let's be honest about it, Saracens at the very start of the professional game, at the forefront of being the professional club. The reason I got involved in Saracens is, very briefly, I was running the club draw for our Christmas draw one year for Aberdeen Rugby Club. And, you always have the boxes of chocolates and this, that or the other and vouchers or whatever. And I thought I'd try and do something different. The game's just gone professional. So I wrote to every single rugby club I could think of and said, look, we're doing this. Is there anything, a signed shirt, whatever it may be? And out of all of the clubs who nowadays, if you did that, they would be falling over backwards to throw everything at you. 2 clubs wrote back to me. Bath, who said, look, sorry, we can't help you. We decided we're just going to look after people in the BA postcode, which is fair dues, but good luck with what you're doing and hope you're successful. And Saracens, who sent me 4 tickets. And I put 20 quid in the pot and took 2 tickets for me and my brother to go. And the other 2 tickets were one of the star prizes. And I went along and we watched them play Leicester and, that was it. And I had no tribal loyalty to any rugby club, but because Saracens came out and showed an innovative way of dealing with potential new supporters, that got me on board. And Sam, you said you started watching them at Vicarage Road. I remember sitting in there with nearly 20,000 people in there. Just because it was 20, 30 years ago doesn't mean that it couldn't work again, could it, Sam?
No, exactly. And it's always been a very accessible club, I felt. It's very approachable. Friends that follow other clubs where it's just, it doesn't, it just isn't the same. And we seem to make the effort and we seem to care. That's the feeling that I've always had and felt.
And I've just quickly looked up on the old inflation calculator that if you said in 1998 my ticket was costing me £10, of which £5 went straight back to my rugby club, that £10 today is worth probably £22.80. And I'm just wondering whether there's any ticket at Stonex for £22.80 for an adult, where £11.40 would go back to a club. And the answer is obviously no. And it's the same as everything. You're a musician. The gig side of things is ridiculous. The rule of thumb of the day, I went to see Queen at Nebworth in 1986 and it was £16.50, including my coach travel, which is roughly about 75 quid a day. You don't get decent bands like that for 75 quid, do you?
There's 2 things happened in music. Because bands don't sell records anymore, they make it all from playing live. The big ones, and Oasis, are the hundreds and hundreds of pounds to go and see them. But if you go and see a local band in your pub, it's probably not much more than you were paying in bloody 1902 or something.
1902, when you first started.
Exactly. I think the cheapest price is something like 25 quid. I don't know how much a standing ticket is, but I think a match day ticket in the North Stands, say, it isn't much more than that £22.50. But as we said in the interview, and Charlie confirmed my suspicion, the cheap seats sell all right, Saracens, and the prawn sandwich seats sell all right. It's that middle tier that is probably overpriced.
if you are spending £40 on a ticket, I'm coming from Banbury. I bought my ticket for the showdown. It's £34 a ticket there, which is really good value. But that's because you can sell 60,000 tickets.
Yes.
You know, so I mean, it's the old question, is it, would you rather have 1,000 people paying £100 or 10,000 people paying £10? And actually, you know, Charlie made the comment, it's in the benefit of the TV broadcasters and everything that they want to see full grounds because the atmosphere and everything. There is a huge balancing act. But then you've got to add in the fact that for me to travel to Tottenham, to the showdown, I'm either going to have to drive and park at Westfield and then get trains across and everything. It's going to cost me probably double, if not more, just to travel to the game than it is for my ticket. And once you start counting those sort of things in, and he talks about access, he talks about the fact that you'd look to have a tube station just next door to Duncan's house, you know, so I could have a cup of tea before I get back to tube or whatever. But unfortunately, where the club is positioned, it's not terrible, but it's not bang in the centre of the city like it is in Gloucester or Leicester or Northampton. It's a real difficult job they've got on to get it right, isn't it? And I do sympathise with them a lot.
If just dropping the pricing would fill the ground, then the women's games would be full.
Yeah.
Because it's cheap as chips. It's far more sophisticated than that. And as I said in the interview, it's actually easier to get to than it is for Sandy Park. If the ground was in Piccadilly Circus, yes, it would be easier. But it's not that bad. As Charlie said, it's a wonderful ground to be at. It's one of the best places to go and see a live sporting event. So there's swings and roundabouts.
It's funny because we are the wrong side of all the train lines going to and fro, if you like. So my dad's in Bushy, so that's not too bad. And what we've been doing the last few years is normally get a train down from Tring to Bushy. Then Bushy, we'd actually use Ubers because it's more straightforward, but that's very expensive. You mentioned, Jez, you're going to the showdown, and I don't know if you guys have seen it, but I was really impressed. I saw an email the other day where they're actually putting on coaches because, again, it's quite expensive to go to Tottenham and it's a very difficult place to get in and out of, as you know. But I don't know if you saw that email that went out from the club that they're running some buses, and they're actually running one from Aylesbury where you get picked up about 10 minutes from my house, 2:15, missed the ladies' game, unfortunately, take you down to Tottenham. It will coach park and then pick you up at 8:30 and take you back to Aylesbury, and all of that for £31 per person, I thought was fantastic value. And for me, it takes out all the stress and the strain of trying to do that. Coming back to the Stonex, it's not the most straightforward place in the world from my point of view to get to, unfortunately, but you make that effort, but it's not getting any cheaper.
Well, you are a hero, Sam, because most regulars live within an hour. Yeah, and you can see why. What you just explained is why.
Yes.
I'm just wondering whether it's worth my while to drive from Mill Hill out to Aylesbury to come back in.
If you drive from Aylesbury to the Stonex, it's 48 minutes.
Well, that's all right, isn't
as
it?
the crow flies. That's fantastic. But we all know on a match day, it's that little bit more trickier to get in and out. And to try and park around there is, it's getting more and more expensive every season.
Duncan's all right. He gets helicoptered in anyway, so I mean...
Yeah, even though I can walk, I get the helicopter, you're quite right.
Yeah, doing you a bit for the environment. The important thing that came out of it is that Charlie's a guy who's got enthusiasm.
And he's driving in from Leatherhead, by the way.
And we give him his support because, I mean, that's all that we can do is that the support needs to be there. He obviously knows what he's doing, so hopefully it'll be all good. The story that came out last week in the Telegraph, number one, I thought quite ironic. Although the Telegraph didn't break the original salary cap story, they were very quick to jump on that one when the Daily Mail did break it. A thing comes out of the Telegraph last week, and it seems to be dripping through more and more information that perhaps the punishment for what Saracens got up to 10 years ago now perhaps was a little bit excessive, particularly in relation to Mauro Itoje's image rights, which I think at the time we all knew that one was going to blow up in the powers that be's faces because, I mean, let's be honest about it. He was always going to be England captain. There was always a likelihood he was going to be British Lions captain. And to say that he might have got injured, well, you know, I think they caught that one up. And further story that came out by Simon Cohen, who was a Leicester Tiger CEO at the time, said that basically they did get that one wrong. It's a bit of a story now. it might be a bit of a non-story, and you'll go into the reasons behind that. First thing to say is I don't think it will change anybody's minds, because the haters will always hate, and they will never read beyond the headlines, because the amount of people you see the comments on the various social medias where they've read the headline and thought, oh, Saracens can get another punishment. And then they read it and they think, oh, well, the same old Sarries getting away with murder, which I can't work out, seeing as we got a fine that nobody else has ever come close to, and a points deduction that nobody's ever come close to. The rules were different for Saracens because we got completely out the blasted over it. But the haters will always hate. The other side of the coin is that the people who were disillusioned and disappointed and got a chip on the shoulder about the treatment that Saracens got will only become more disillusioned and more disappointed, and they have an even bigger chip on their shoulder now because of the story coming out, won't they, Duncan?
Yeah, just cut me a little bit of slack here because it's a complicated subject. But when you're talking about the punishment that we've got, you must differentiate, in my opinion, between the property deals and everything else. With the property deals, when you cut through it, strip it all away, the players were given half the profit on a house for guaranteeing a mortgage. Now, if you go to a building society or bank and ask for a mortgage and they say, yeah, we'll give you a mortgage, but we want half the profit on the house, you would say, get lost. That is just not commercial. It's not normal at all. Let alone if someone says, I will guarantee that mortgage for you if you give me half the profit on the house. You'll say, come on, the mortgage is 60% of the cost of the house. Even in the worst property crisis ever, prices have only fallen by 10 to 15%. What are you talking about? But that's what the players got. And that's why the judge, the salary cap manager, everybody said, come off it. This is not commercial. You're giving them something and you're not including it as salary. So put the property deals to one side. They helped us keep a golden generation players and add players like Liam Williams and Elliot Daly. They helped us. It should have been declared as salary. But on the Marrow deal, as you say, what happened was that Safri Champness came up with a valuation that, with hindsight, was a sixth of what it should have been.
Yeah.
It was just a rubbish valuation. And because of that, we got a fine for that 2018 year of 2.4 million. What I think, and I have moved on this, I started off thinking it was just a slow news day at the Telegraph, and they're not particularly bad at coming up with talking bollocks. And I thought it was that. But when I saw the club statement, I thought, oh, hang on a minute. Yeah, this is based on anger at the club that they paid 2.4 million when they shouldn't have. Now, the reason why they've come up with this idea that Safri Champness were conflicted is because in law, you can't reopen something and go back and say, with hindsight, it's been proved to be wrong. The test is, was it reasonable for the judge to accept Safri Champness's valuation? And that's why they're going for Safri Champness. Now, last point here, and I will finish soon, I do promise you.
Sorry, I'm just waking up now.
Here's the point. If Saracens threaten the Premiership with going to court and the Premiership think, you are talking rubbish, you've got no basis in law, even if the Premiership go to court and win, they lose. And the reason for that is normally you will only get about 70% of your costs back. By the time you've had lawyers going through all of the emails and everything and the amount of work involved and barristers on 15 to 30 grand a day, etc., the Prem's cost could easily get to 5 million. They only get back 70% of that. So it's going to cost them 1.5 million to try and save 2.4. And they'd have all the heartache and hassle of going to court about it. You know, even if you're innocent, you will pay someone to go away. And that's what I think is likely to happen. I might be completely wrong, might all be guesswork, but I think there will be a settlement, probably subject to a confidentiality agreement, and we'll never hear anything about it.
No. I mean, I think I understand it slightly from Dominic Sylvester's point of view, because I think Dominic is probably the person who's driving a lot of this, because it's reputational. You know, I mean, he is a businessman. Him and Nigel Ray, they're named Nigel Ray more than Dominic, obviously, but Nigel Ray's name was dragged through the mud. And, you know, Simon Cohen was very magnanimous in what he said, is that Nigel Ray personally should never have been dealt in that way. Yes, he's a businessman, capitalist businessman, particularly the ones who are billionaires will find every way they possibly can to make their billions even more billions. However, as Simon Cohen said, Nigel Ray did an awful lot of good for the game of rugby. And I've already talked about it when I said about Peter Deacon and everything they did at the inception of professional club rugby in this country. The Saracens led the way and showed an awful lot of ways to go. And I always felt that at the point when they turned around and said this was wrong, no problem. I had no problem with them making the decisions they did and punishing us. I have issues with the fact that everybody else decided that punishment wasn't enough and then got it increased because that was all to do with competition and not justice, I felt at the time. And nothing much has changed my mind about that. That's a lot to do with the fact I think Tony Rose is a whatever anyway. Nobody ever sat down and went, do you know what? The game of rugby is struggling. Okay, it's illegal at this point what Saracens have done, but not to even not look at it and say, is it potentially a viable way of going forward? Because let's be honest about it, as Simon Cohen made the comment, the owners at Bath, the owners at Leicester, they were all doing similar dodgy things, and, you know, some clubs get treated a bit different than others. But at the end of the day, Nigel Ray did great things for rugby, not just the Saracens. He loves rugby union. He loves sport, full stop. And, you know, that's the problem that I think Dominic Sylvester is. He doesn't need £1.5 million. Saracens, the club, probably needs £1.5 million or £2.4 million. He doesn't personally, but what he's interested in is his reputation and Nigel Ray's reputation.
Exactly. And Nigel Ray, as you say, is one of rugby union's really good men. But it's not going to change anything. As you say, that story popped up straight away. I saw it on my Facebook feed and people are jumping on the bandwagon and think we've done something wrong again, and without even reading or clicking into it. And I feel that why? You know, what's the need? You're not going to change anyone's opinion. That was a period where, for whatever reason, people were angry, annoyed, jealous, whatever you want to call it. We were doing what we were doing. Yeah, to me, it's just why now, and what's the purpose of it? What's going to come of it? And like Duncan says, if you look at it, hindsight's a wonderful thing. That's an amazing investment on Maro's image rights. Now, looking at it, to what purpose is this going to serve?
2 points. The first was the really disgraceful part of the whole process. As I've explained, I believe that, you know, on a large part of it, we were banged to rights, deserved a punishment. They appointed a judge, had a process, and then when it looked like we were going to avoid relegation, threw their toys out the pram, and disgracefully the people who were our judge and jury and whatever turned it all upside down because it didn't suit them, and that was a disgrace. I don't know Dominic Sylvester, but he made his money in insurance. And in the world of insurance, this is his game. You know, insurers will decide, are they going to pay out? Will someone sue us? If they sue us, will it mean we can do a deal and we can pay a bit less? If they have to pay out, is there anybody else we can sue to try and get back a bit of our money? And as I say, most actions are settled out of court for the very good reasons that I explained about cost and what have you. This is Dominic Sylvester's backyard. This is the world he knows. And as I say, I think he's seen an opportunity to get a bit of money back. A total guess.
Yeah.
But given the statements that Saracens have put out, probably, I don't know this, I think they've started it in the press and they see that they can get some money back. And when you're losing £7 million a season, why wouldn't you?
Well, there is that. I mean, the only thing I would perhaps ask Dominic and whoever at the club to bear in mind is, and I do have to give the powers that be at that time a little bit of slack, because they were dealing with something that had never been seen before. Professionalism had only been around for 20 years. They'd not seen an issue like this. Other sports had. I mean, people have compared it to the Lance Armstrong, doping. Crazy, really, but you can see why. We see Manchester City at the moment in football, you know, that all of that going off. There were betting scandals in football back in the 60s. The Everton player got banned. There's all this. In rugby union, they'd never seen anything like this. So basically what I'm just saying is that we've not seen this happen before. What I would say to guys at Saracens is, if you now win, and it costs rugby union, whoever, and that affects the game as a whole, the reputation is going to be tagged even for the haters will hate.
That's a consideration, but as I say, I suspect the eventual settlement will be subject to a confidentiality agreement, and as a news story, it'll slip away, is my guess.
And we'll never know.
Yeah.
Oh, unless we could get Dominic Sylvester on the Festcast, of course, and then his feet to the floor and ask him a question. But I mean, I'm not sure that I would want to deal with a South African insurance magnate in that way. To be perfectly honest,
The reason why I didn't ask Charlie Beall anything about it is I absolutely know if you have a possibility of going to court about something, you keep your bloody mouth shut outside, unless it's with your lawyers agreeing what story you're going to plant in the press.
Everything that we've said is allegedly, just in case there are lawyers listening. And if there are lawyers listening and they do disagree with us, it was all Duncan who said it. He could sell one of his jets and pay off the libel fees. That's all right. We can do with that. But gentlemen, I think we've probably done enough on that. We just need to keep a sense of perspective. I'm sure everything will come out in the wash. But gentlemen, Duncan, thank you for your time tonight. And Sam, welcome to the Fezcast. I hope you enjoyed it, Sam.
Very much so, and thank you very much for inviting me. And yeah, I hope I've added some value. And
tons better than Jez.
Absolutely. But yeah, it's been wonderful meeting you and having you on board. And I say to everybody out there in Fezcast land, thank you for your time. Hope you've enjoyed the show, and we'll speak to you next week, where I might have an interview with a Club Cult legend. Been trying for this one for about 7 years now. Even longer than the Fezcast has been going. It hasn't quite happened yet, but we'll see how that happens. But until next week, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Duncan. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll speak to you next week.
This is the Fezcast.